Hi, it's Ferris from Gardening with Spirit here. It's Good Friday, so it's Easter weekend. I'm making the most of a little bit of sunshine. I thought I'd give you a quick garden update. So here are the new edges for the raised beds. All the edges are in, and now I'm starting phase 2 of that job, which is in some ways the harder bit, which is topping up the beds, weeding them. They were very weedy. Putting back some plants I had to take out when I moved where the location of the beds were. There's a lot of topping up here towards the edges because the ground slopes away, but that means they will be great for some root crops in those areas. To put in my lemon balm back, I love lemon balm, and my black currant. So I'm working now on these bits, a lot of creeping buttercup and dandelion here. So this is kind of the unglamorous bit, is really getting these beds ready for plants to go in them sometime next month probably. And I do a lot of my planting in plugs rather than sowing direct because I have such an issue with slugs here. I like to give the plants a bit of a chance, a bit of a head start before they have to face the slugs. So see, in some of these beds where I have changed where the path is, I've kind of got to get the gravel out, do all that, and I have all this lovely bark chips that I want to line the paths with. So this whole thing could take me quite a while. I'll work on the beds first and I can be doing the paths while I'm putting plants in. So that's that. I have started sowing seeds. I have another project on the go, I'll show you in a minute. That's what all these bits of woods are. I've been sowing all sorts of things. I don't have much come up yet. You can just see a very late sweet pea, and you can see a couple of beetroots there. So I do a lot of sowing in modules. There's one that wanted a bit of extra protection, so some of them I cover at night. So that's what's going on in here, and I've still got to clear a lot of these pots so I have more growing space. And I do have one more project. Oh, I also have my garlic and onions to go in soon. Now remember I was saying about this patch here that when I looked out from the window it was really bare, and it's come back well. It had got quite wet. You can see where it sort of hummocks, but it's dried out really well. Well, to solve my issue of it looking very bare while I've all this lovely garden I can't see out the window, I have, with a lot of assistance, been making planters. So it means because of the height of them, I can see those plants from outside, and I love violas, so you know I can be inside on a rainy day and appreciating those. I am going to grow herbs, some flowers. I'm going to try some tomatoes, some tumbler tomatoes in these, some plants for pollinators, and I'll show you later in the polytunnel I've got a few more getting ready to go. So that's how we are for Easter. I'm going to try and stay outside and work on these beds today, and then if it does rain as is predicted later in the weekend, I can go and play in the polytunnel. So happy Easter everybody, and happy gardening. So here is the polytunnel. Again, it's Easter Friday and I'm still clearing out the wood. Remember those planters up the top? I still have a few more of them to make, and this is where I was treating the wood for them. So all those bits of wood are for the planters, and it's really high time I get in here, and I want to slightly rejuvenate the beds. I want to put a little bit more compost on top just to give them a little bit of something to start them off for the year. I have my Chinese artichokes I've temporarily put in there before I move them somewhere else. There's a lot to clear. That is, I think there was some lemon balm there. The hardy geranium's doing really well, and as you can see, and I showed this earlier in the year, there are already things starting to sprout up even through my mulch. So that's telling me I could easily start sowing seeds in here now. As I said, I might revitalize it slightly before. I also have to weed. There's meadowsweet and all sorts of things coming in from the edges. There's even a few rogue potatoes. Now, this is something I had tried to use for slug control. I had sunk it in the ground and it didn't do anything at all. I'm finding more slugs under the edges of my pavers than I was in them. And it is a slight issue because maybe not in this little patch, but in the one the other side I'll show you. There is slug damage already and I want to get on top of that. And I like this little planting. This was pak choi and I've already had a couple of bumblebees in, so I'm leaving that to flower. And it's where I threw a whole rake of things in together. There's a little bit of carrot in there, there's a few garlic, there's a little bit of chard, and I really like doing that. I really like doing those little mix of polycultures. I love this one over here. I love this little one over here. I'm going to leave this rocket to flower. Again, for any of those early bumblebees or bees. And they're lovely. I love those little flowers. And this chard, oh, it's gorgeous. And I think, is that a cabbage or a cauliflower? I can't quite remember. I think there's going to be a couple of flowers coming through in there as well. I've still got a few beetroot. Now the tops, the root is going to be far too woody, but I use the tops of the leaves in juices, so that works really well for me. I have to move these straw bales. They're actually on the pads. It was for when I was treating all that wood. And you can see there's a few dandelions and things. So that's going to be my work. It's meant to get really wet later in the weekend. So I think once it gets wet, I will come here. I still have this plan. For this is my old patch of mushroom compost. I'm going to put this, some of it I might bring up to the beds up top, some of it I will top up here. See the compost there. And then this area, I did want to do a little bit of wild flowers. Now, it's got really nettly, so I might have a problem with that, but if I just keep at them. And I really like nettle tea, so when the young nettles come, as I dig them out, I can harvest them, so they are a useful harvest for me. And see, they're already coming. So, as I said, it can be useful. I think I might membrane this bit here, so then after the membrane, later this year, this could be a wildflower meadow or it could be a nettle meadow. You'll have to watch this space to find out. So that is the tunnel at Easter. Said I'll have a bit of weeding to do in amongst the cracks, but I have a few things. I have a bit of kale and asparagus kale. I've already got a nettle crop that I will pull up. I need to divide these with some garlic I forgot to take out. And I'm still getting lots of parsley. But one of the reasons for the planters in the top is I love using parsley. And even though the house is not far away, when you're in the middle of making a lunch or a dinner, it's much easier to have a little bit of parsley outside the door. So that's where those planters are going to come in really handy. And I still have, look at all this celery that's self-seeded in the path. I still was using some of that for juices as well, and a chard there in the path. And I cut back the feverfew, and that's coming back, so that will be lovely. So that is the polytunnel.